December 17, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Obergefreiter Hans Müller crouched inside his frozen foxhole, gripping a pencil with shaking hands. What he wrote in his diary that morning would haunt him for the rest of his life: the Americans are nothing like the Russians. Their artillery is something else entirely. It is not only the volume of fire. It is the speed. The accuracy. The fact that you have no time to react. One moment, silence. The next moment, the entire world explodes. That fog-covered morning, Müller witnessed something that shattered every belief German soldiers held about American capability. His battalion, part of the 6th SS Panzer Army, had just launched Hitler's final offensive in the West, the Battle of the Bulge. They achieved complete surprise. The Americans were thinly spread. Victory looked close. Then American artillery found them. What Müller, and every German soldier, could not have known was that they were marching straight into the most lethal artillery system ever deployed in human history. A system so advanced, so rapid, and so perfectly coordinated that it single-handedly broke Germany's last offensive and revealed the true industrial and technological dominance of the United States. The collapse started long before the Bulge. German veterans arriving from the Eastern Front in 1943–44 assumed that American artillery was like Soviet artillery. They were wrong. Against the Soviets, veterans had learned to survive, ranging shots giving warning, predictable patterns, slow fire direction, 10 to 15 minutes from spotting to impact, but the Americans were terrifyingly different. Gefreiter Otto Schmidt, a veteran of 2 years in Russia and captured with the Afrika Korps in Tunisia, described his first encounter: "We thought we were safe. The Russians would need an hour to find us, then a small aircraft flew overhead, an unarmed Piper Cub, 3 minutes later. Without warning, our entire position exploded. In 30 seconds my company ceased to exist. I survived with 10 others out of 123 men. The harmless-looking aircraft was the L-4 Grasshopper. The most feared American aircraft in the German army, not because it carried weapons, but because artillery always followed it. If you saw a Grasshopper, you had seconds to live. What made American artillery so deadly? Not a single invention, but an entire system built through technology, training, and massive industrial capacity. Fire Direction Centers, FDCs. German batteries calculated firing data individually. Americans centralized everything. One FDC could coordinate dozens of batteries simultaneously. This allowed faster calculations, unified fire missions, devastating mass barrages, pre-computed firing tables. Back in the US, rooms full of human computers, mostly women, used mechanical calculators to pre-compute firing solutions for every weather and environmental condition. German officer Vera Hoffmann examined captured tables. The Americans have done all the mathematics in advance. In the field, they simply look up the answer. This alone cut fire mission times from hours to minutes. Time on target, TOT, America's secret artillery superpower, perhaps the deadliest technique of World War II. Time on target means shells from different batteries, different ranges, and different distances all arrive within the same 3-second window. No ranging shots, no warning, just sudden annihilation. German survivor Kurt Zimmermann wrote, "You hear nothing. Then the world ends." Studies later showed 66% of artillery casualties happen in the first few seconds, and TOT maximized that lethality. Superior radios. More forward observers. Americans used FM radios, clear, static-free, reliable. Germans mostly used AM radios, noisy, unreliable. Every U.S. infantry battalion had multiple radio-equipped forward observers. German battalions often had only one or two, sometimes shared. American observers could call their battalion guns, divisional artillery, corps guns, even Army-level heavy guns. A single U.S. lieutenant could command more firepower than an entire German regiment. Mobility, trucks versus horses. This was a war between the 20th century and the 19th century. American artillery was fully motorized, German artillery was 80% horse-drawn. A U.S. battery could displace in 20 minutes, a German battery often required 2 to 4 hours, depending on weather. In the Ardennes mud, many German guns simply couldn't move. The VT, proximity, fuse, Germany's worst nightmare, a miniature radar inside a shell, it detonated at the perfect height, every time. This turned shallow foxholes into death traps. The U.S. first authorized VT fuses in Europe during the Battle of the Bulge, and they changed everything. German troops called them demon shells. Hans Müller wrote, "These shells exploded above us, the fragments came down like rain, there was no cover, we simply died." Effectiveness increased by 200 to 700% depending on conditions. This was artillery on a different level. Industrial power, the true deciding factor. American industry dwarfed Germany's. 8,500 105 mm howitzers produced, 10,300 155 mm howitzers, millions of shells, unlimited ammunition stocks. A German battery might receive 50 shells for an entire week. An American battery could fire thousands per day. German officer Vogel wrote, "We fought a poor man's war against a rich man's enemy." The Battle of the Bulge, artillery decides the outcome. Germany's plan relied on fog to block Allied aircraft, but they forgot, artillery doesn't need good weather. Within days, German attacks stalled, horse-drawn artillery couldn't move. Ammunition ran out, counter-battery fire was impossible, American guns fired continuously. German units suffered 30 to 40% casualties, mostly from artillery. Captured Commander Heinrich Müller summarized it best, "We were defeated by American artillery before we were defeated by American infantry or tanks." After the war, German officers admit the truth. German POWs in the U.S. were shocked by American industry. Trains full of artillery, mountains of ammunition, endless factories. Mathematics professor Vera Hoffman concluded, "The Americans have taken the art of artillery and turned it into an industrial process. Their system does not rely on individual genius. It produces overwhelming, accurate firepower every time." Hans Müller, whose diary opened this story, finally wrote, "Everything we were told about American weakness was a lie. Their soldiers fought with courage, their artillery was unbeatable, this, more than anything else, defeated us." The final verdict, by 1945, German artillery was collapsing, no ammunition, no horses, no mobility, few functioning guns, no air cover, no counter-battery capability. American artillery grew even stronger. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, historians later agreed, artillery, not tanks, not aircraft, was the single most decisive American weapon of World War II. It broke German attacks, it shattered German morale, it crushed German mobility, and it demonstrated the unstoppable power of American industrial warfare. In December 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, a German soldier named Hans Müller wrote in his diary that American artillery was unlike anything he had ever seen. He said the shells came without warning, and entire groups of soldiers were destroyed in seconds. This experience was shared by thousands of German troops across the Western Front. Many German soldiers thought American artillery would be slow, weak, or poorly organized. They believed this because they had fought the Soviet Union earlier in the war, and Soviet artillery usually took a long time to aim and fire. But the Americans were completely different. They used a modern, fast, and highly organized system that gave them a huge advantage. Why American artillery was so effective: Fire Direction Centers, FDCs. The U.S. Army used special command centers called Fire Direction Centers. Instead of each artillery battery working alone, all guns worked together. This meant faster calculations, faster firing, many guns hitting one target at the same time. This was something the German army could not match: pre-calculated firing tables. In the United States, before the war, thousands of workers used mechanical calculators to create firing tables for every possible condition. So when American artillery needed to fire, soldiers did not have to do complex math, they simply looked up the solution and fired quickly. German artillery had to calculate everything on the spot, which took more time on target, TOT. This was the most feared American tactic. It meant that shells from different guns fired at different distances would all land at the same moment, within 2 to 3 seconds. There was no warning, no ranging shots, no chance to escape. German soldiers said it felt like the sky suddenly exploded. Forward observers and better radios. The U.S. Army used FM radios, which were clearer and had less noise. They also had many forward observers, soldiers who watched the battlefield and called artillery strikes. A single American officer could call battalion artillery, divisional artillery, corps artillery, even heavy long-range guns. This meant American artillery could react in minutes. Mobility, trucks versus horses. Most American artillery was moved by trucks, most German artillery was moved by horses. This meant Americans could move their guns quickly. Germans often got stuck in mud or snow. Americans could set up, fire, and move again before Germans were ready. This difference became critical during the Battle of the Bulge, the VT proximity fuse. Later in the war, Americans used a new type of fuse that exploded the shell above the ground instead of on impact. This created a rain of deadly fragments. It was extremely effective, especially against troops in trenches or forests. German soldiers called these shells terrible and impossible to survive. Industrial strength. The United States produced more artillery guns, more ammunition, more vehicles, more radios than any country in the world. American artillery units almost never ran out of shells, while German units often had to ration every shot. This allowed the U.S. to fire day and night without stopping. The Battle of the Bulge. Artillery decides the outcome. During the German offensive in December 1944, the weather was bad, Allied planes could not fly. Germany hoped this would allow their troops to break through, but American artillery did not need clear skies. It continued firing constantly. German attacks slowed down, tank units ran out of fuel, infantry units were cut off, and artillery units could not move. American guns fired more than 1,250,000 shells during the battle. German soldiers later said the main reason their attack failed was American artillery. What German officers said after the war, after Germany surrendered, many officers finally admitted that American artillery had been the most dangerous weapon they faced. One officer said, "American artillery defeated us before their tanks or infantry ever reached us." Another explained, "Their system was modern. Ours was old. We had no chance." Hans Müller, the soldier who wrote the diary, said, "Their artillery was fast, accurate, and endless. It broke us." Final conclusion: American artillery was one of the biggest reasons the Allies won in Europe. It was fast, accurate, well organized, backed by a huge industrial power. It destroyed German attacks, protected American troops, and showed how modern technology and planning can decide a war.